Part 1: The Allure of Temptation. I used to think cheating was a choice made by cowards. People too selfish or too weak to face the truth, or too greedy to be satisfied with what they had. I thought that until I became one of them. My name is Mark, and I live in a nice two-story home in the suburbs with my wife, Julia, and our two kids, Emily and Noah. I have a stable job, a decent reputation, and what looks, on the outside, like a good life. But let me tell you how cracks form in walls that were once solid. Let me tell you how silence can be louder than screaming. Julia and I had been married for 12 years. That number used to feel like an accomplishment. Now it felt like a weight. We were that couple, solid, reliable, always on time to school meetings and birthday parties, predictable in our arguments and routines. We had inside jokes, shared passwords, and Sunday morning pancakes. But the spark had gone. And I didn't notice when it left. Or maybe I did, and just didn't want to admit it. It wasn't that I didn't love her anymore. It was something more terrifying. I loved her, but I didn't feel seen by her. Our conversations had become transactional. Who's picking up the kids? Did you pay the electricity? Your mom called again. There were no stolen glances anymore, no subtle brushes of hands across the kitchen counter, no warm moments of wordless understanding. Just life. Busy. Functional. And cold. Then came Alyssa. She was a copywriter who joined our marketing agency on a 6-month contract. Younger, confident in a way that didn't try too hard. The first time I noticed her, it wasn't about attraction. She laughed at something I said during a meeting, really laughed, not polite, not performative, but as if I'd genuinely surprised her. It hit me in a place I didn't know was starved. When someone finds you funny again after years of being invisible, it does something to you. I didn't pursue her. At least not at first. It started innocently. She'd pass by my office and poke her head in with some witty remark or ask for my opinion on a project. I enjoyed it. I needed it. Her energy was different. She saw me as someone valuable, interesting, not just the husband, the dad, the provider. At home, Julia was tired all the time. To be fair, I was too. But it felt like she'd already given up on us, and I didn't know how to bring us back. The last time she touched me in bed, it felt more like duty than desire. That night, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was just how marriage went. If I was supposed to feel like a roommate instead of a lover. I hated that thought. And I hated even more that I didn't talk to her about it. Instead, I started to crave those 10-minute conversations with Alyssa like a drug. It was after a late-night deadline that it happened. The office was quiet, most people gone. She stayed behind to help with the final tweaks on a presentation. We sat close, shoulders brushing now and then, the air between us heavy but unspoken. At some point, I said something that made her laugh again, and she looked at me, not just looked but searched. And I let her. I didn't pull away when her fingers lingered on mine. I didn't stop her when she leaned in. That first kiss was a whisper against my better judgment. A moment that lasted seconds but detonated inside my chest like a bomb. I remember walking out of that office dazed. Ashamed. Alive. All at once. The next day, I pretended nothing had happened. She didn't mention it either. But something had shifted. The line had been crossed, and neither of us were willing to erase it. I told myself it was a mistake. I told myself it would stop. But I knew, deep down, I didn't want it to stop. At home, Julia noticed something was different. "You're quiet," she said over dinner one night. "Just work," I replied, stabbing my food. She nodded. No further questions. No suspicion. Just acceptance. That somehow hurt even more. I started rationalizing. Telling myself that this didn't mean I didn't love Julia. That men have needs, and Alyssa was just a spark in a dark tunnel. That this would pass. That I could control it. But the truth was uglier than that. I felt alive with Alyssa. Seen. desired. And for a man who had spent years walking around invisible in his own home, that feeling was intoxicating. The affair didn't become physical right away. We danced around it for weeks. Coffee breaks turned into long lunches. Shared glances turned into subtle touches. Each time I went home, I carried guilt in my chest like a stone, but it never stopped me from going back the next day. I was still reading bedtime stories to Noah. Still showing up at Emily's school plays. Still smiling in family photos. But inside, I was fracturing. Two lives pulling at each other. One built on years of love and commitment. The other built on want and fire. I knew this couldn't last. I knew something had to break. I just didn't know when. Or how much it would cost. But I wasn't ready to stop. Not yet. Part 2: The Dual Life. People think that when you cheat, it's either all guilt or all thrill. It's not. It's both. It's standing in the kitchen helping your daughter with homework while your phone vibrates in your pocket, and you know it's her. It's kissing your wife goodnight with the taste of another woman still lingering behind your teeth. It's being two men, one who would die for his family, and one who's slowly killing it. After the first kiss, Alyssa and I pulled back for a while. Weeks passed and we avoided being alone. She became colder, more professional, which somehow made me crave her even more. I told myself I respected the boundary she was trying to build. I told myself it was over. But the thoughts didn't leave. One evening, after a long client meeting, we ended up in the same elevator, just the two of us. Neither of us said a word. The silence was electric. When the doors opened, I followed her into the hallway instead of going to my car. She didn't stop me. She led me to her car, and we sat there in silence for what felt like a lifetime. "I can't stop thinking about you," I said finally, my voice hoarse. She didn't look at me. "I know." And that was the beginning of the second act, the one I wish I could erase. It started with hotel rooms. Cheap ones, quiet ones. Nothing glamorous. Just time. Time to pretend I was someone else. Time to feel like I mattered again. Alyssa wasn't just sex. She listened. She looked at me like I was something more than a paycheck and a chore list. And I gave her something too: attention, maturity, stability. I think she liked that I had a family. Maybe it made me seem safe, untouchable. But I wasn't untouchable. I was falling. At home, things got harder. Julia didn't suspect a thing, at least, not then, but she noticed the distance. She'd reach out in small ways, a hand on my arm, a question about my day, a new dress she didn't wear for the kids. I could feel her trying. And that made it worse. I started lying more. Late meetings. Traffic. Client drinks. The lies rolled off my tongue like second nature. I hated myself more each day, but I couldn't stop. I kept telling myself I was still a good father. Still a good man. Still in control. But I wasn't. One night, Emily had a fever. Julia was up with her most of the night. I'd just come back from being with Alyssa. I'd kissed my wife on the forehead and crawled into bed like nothing had happened. The next morning, Julia was exhausted, her eyes red, her body slumped in the kitchen. "You could have helped," she said quietly. I just nodded. I didn't say a word. How could I? The guilt was clawing at my insides, but my pride wouldn't let me speak. Things with Alyssa got more complicated too. She started to want more. More time. More emotion. She asked questions about my marriage. She wanted to know if I loved my wife. I told her I didn't know. That wasn't entirely true. One morning, she texted, "You don't belong there anymore." I stared at the message for a long time. My daughter was singing in the bathroom. My son was yelling about cereal. My wife was humming as she packed lunches. I belonged here. But I didn't feel like I did. I was two people, and I was starting to hate both. Then the near miss happened. I was at a cafe with Alyssa, our usual hidden spot. Julia texted me a photo of Noah holding a handmade card that said "I love Daddy." A coincidence. But it hit like a hammer. Right then, Alyssa reached for my hand across the table. And just as our fingers touched, I saw a woman from Julia's book club at the counter. I froze. She looked at me. Recognition flickered. I pulled my hand back like it was on fire. We left immediately, but the damage was done. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept seeing that look in the woman's eyes: curiosity, confusion, maybe suspicion. For days after, I waited for Julia to confront me. She didn't. But something changed. She became more distant. More mechanical. Like she was watching me. Measuring my answers. Testing the air between us. I knew then that even if she didn't have proof, some part of her felt it. Alyssa didn't understand why I started pulling back. I stopped replying right away. I canceled a few meetings. I tried to create space, to regain control. She asked me if I was ashamed of her. I said, no. I'm ashamed of me. But that didn't make it better. That weekend, we had a family picnic. I watched Julia laugh with the kids. She looked radiant in the sunlight, even without makeup. There was a peace in her I hadn't seen in a long time. And it broke me. Because I knew I was stealing that peace every day I lived this lie. That night, Julia came into our bedroom after the kids were asleep and sat on the bed, beside me. "Is there someone else?" she asked softly. I froze. "No," I whispered. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just nodded, slowly. "Okay." And she got up and left the room. I sat there, drowning in shame. Not because I lied. But because I didn't even deserve her anger anymore. Things unraveled fast after that. Julia didn't ask again. But she changed. Colder. Shorter conversations. She stopped waiting up for me. We stopped touching at all. The air between us was a dead thing. And Alyssa? She was tired of waiting. She wanted me to leave. Said I was selfish. Said I was a coward. And maybe she was right. I was a man who'd wanted everything and protected nothing. I had dishonored the woman who gave me 12 years of her life. I had endangered the family I swore to protect. And for what? A taste of something fleeting? That night, as I watched my kids sleep, I realized I was standing at the edge. I couldn't live in both worlds anymore. One of them had to go. And no matter how much I tried to justify what I'd done, I knew the choice had to be made. Part 3, Redemption or Ruin. The day after Julia asked if there was someone else, everything in the house felt quieter. Not silent, exactly. Our kids still bickered, the dog still barked at the mailman, and the dishwasher still clanked its nightly rhythm. But between those sounds, there was a stillness I couldn't explain. Or maybe I could. I was watching a woman fall out of love with me in real time. She didn't press the question again. That terrified me more than if she had. I wanted her to scream. I wanted her to accuse me. Something. Anything. Because at least that meant she still cared. But she didn't. Or she wouldn't let herself show it. A few days passed. I tried to fix things the only way I knew how, doing more. I made breakfast. Took the kids to school. Did laundry. I even bought her flowers, lilies, her favorite. She placed them on the windowsill without a word. I'd never felt more like a stranger in my own home. Alyssa kept texting. "Are you okay? You said you'd talk to her. You're ghosting me now?" But what could I say? That I was unraveling? That I'd finally started to see the damage I'd done? That I wasn't the man she thought I was and maybe never had been? Eventually, I replied. I can't do this anymore. There was no response. Not that day. Not the next. And I knew what that silence meant. Still, my problem wasn't Alyssa. Not really. It was the man in the mirror who let this happen. Who watched the spark go out in his marriage and chose escape instead of rebuilding. Who created a storm and expected no one to get wet. I tried talking to Julia. I sat her down late one evening, when the kids were asleep and the house had that soft, forgiving glow only warm lamplight can give. I need to tell you something, I said. She didn't look at me. Just folded a towel in her lap. I made a mistake, I continued. A big one. She stopped folding. Her fingers went still. I didn't mean for it to happen. I wasn't looking for it. But I let it happen. Silence. I ended it, I added quickly. Because I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose this. Still silence. And then she asked the one question I hadn't prepared for. Why? Not what I did. Not how long it had gone on. Not who. Just. Why? And I didn't have a good answer. I felt forgotten, I said quietly. Like I wasn't a person anymore. Just someone who paid bills and took out the trash. I didn't feel seen. But that's not your fault. That's on me. I didn't speak up. I didn't ask for what I needed. I just escaped. Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she stood and left the room. We didn't speak for days after that. I slept on the couch, voluntarily. Not because she asked me to, but because I couldn't bear to be near her and feel how distant she'd become. The kids noticed. They asked why Mommy and Daddy were being weird. Julia smiled and said, "Sometimes adults just need space." I watched her lie to them and realized how far she'd come from the woman who used to cry when she killed a houseplant. Life hardens us in ways we don't notice until one day, we look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back. A week later, she handed me a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter, folded neatly and placed beside my morning coffee. My hands shook as I read it. Mark. I don't hate you. I wish I did. It would make this easier. I know I stopped seeing you too. I got lost in motherhood, in chores, in fatigue, in keeping the house from falling apart. Somewhere in all that, I forgot to make space for us. But you didn't talk to me. You didn't tell me what you were feeling. You made choices that shattered something we built for over a decade. And now I don't know how to look at you without seeing her. I don't know how to let you touch me without wondering where those hands have been. I don't know how to rebuild something that feels like ashes. I need time. Please respect that. Jay. That letter crushed me. Because it was written with love and with pain. She wasn't punishing me. She wasn't even condemning me. She was just hurt. And I couldn't fix it. Not with apologies. Not with flowers. Not with effort. All I could do was give her space and hope she'd want to return. I deleted Alyssa's number that day. For real. Not just from my phone, but from my life. I blocked her everywhere. There was no dramatic ending. Just silence. And shame. Over the next month, Julia and I coexisted. Distant but civil. We split responsibilities, exchanged short updates, kept the kids' lives moving. But we weren't us. One night, while putting Emily to bed, she asked, "Are you and Mommy gonna get divorced?" I froze. Why would you ask that? Because you don't laugh with her anymore. Out of the mouths of babes. I held her close and whispered, "We're trying to find our way back, sweetheart." And I meant it. That night, I went to Julia. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't demand a talk. I just said, "I miss you. And I know I don't deserve to. But I do." She looked at me, eyes tired, body rigid. You broke me, Mark. I know. And I don't know if I'll ever trust you again. I wouldn't, if I were you. We stood in that terrible honesty. It was the first moment of truth we'd had in years. I'll go to therapy, I said. Alone, if you want, come. But I'll go. She nodded. Good. And I'll wait. However long it takes. I'll wait. I don't promise anything, she replied. I'm not asking you to. The months that followed were painful. Therapy cracked me open. I confronted parts of my self-ID buried for years: resentment, insecurity, selfishness. I had to learn how to communicate, how to listen, how to sit in discomfort instead of running from it. Julia didn't attend at first. But after a while, she did. Slowly. Carefully. With arms crossed and walls up. But she came. We didn't magically fix everything. This isn't a fairy tale. There were nights she still cried in the shower. Mornings when she wouldn't look at me. Times when I wanted to give up, because the pain was louder than the progress. But one evening, 6 months after the truth came out, we found ourselves sitting on the back porch, watching the kids play. Julia leaned her head on my shoulder, not for long, not dramatically, but just enough. And I knew. There was still something left to rebuild. Not the same house. Not the same marriage. But maybe something stronger if we could face the wreckage and use it to build again. That night, she held my hand as we fell asleep. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a start. And that's when I understood the real cost of infidelity. It's not just broken trust. It's the pieces of yourself you lose in the process, the parts that only someone who loves you can see, hold, and remind you of. I had betrayed the person who believed in me most. But I was learning to believe in myself again, not the selfish version, not the man living a double life, but the man who made a terrible mistake and chose to face it. Somewhere along the road, I stopped asking for redemption. I started earning it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe so you don't lose more engaging stories from my life.